Welcome to For the Love of Books, a podcast by Lanarkshire Libraries. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Lanarkshire Libraries podcast For the Love of Books. My name is Chris Wilson, the E-Services Librarian, and for today's episode we've got another local author to promote a little bit because we had one join our Facebook book group, Lee Adam, and he kind of announced who he was in the group and stuff like that, and had mentioned that he'd released his first debut novel earlier this year. And so I thought it was a good opportunity to get a local author on the podcast and get him to tell us all about his book. So Lee joined me earlier on today to catch up with him and find out all about his debut book, Beast and Burden. So here is Lee to tell us all about it. Hear from local authors and try and kind of help them get a little bit of a kind of profile boost from kind of talking to us and stuff like that sort of stuff. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, Chris. Well, thanks very much for inviting me on for your podcast. I'll appreciate it. And well, my name is Lee Adam. I'm 38 years old. I have a wonderful wife, two amazing daughters, and I've lived in Motherwell pretty much most of my life. And earlier this year, I published my debut crime thriller novel, Beast and Burden.
Fantastic. Yeah, there must be exciting times for you with that all happening and stuff like that, which is great. And am I right in thinking that you're relatively new to kind of writing and having picked up a bit of inspiration, having read a Lee Child book? Is that kind of sort of right?
Yep, that's 100%. I only really started writing after watching the Reacher series on Amazon Prime, and that led me on to reading the Reacher series on Amazon Prime, and that led me on to reading the books, and quickly became a huge fan. And then one afternoon, I was sitting watching YouTube, looking at interviews with Lee Child, and I discovered that he didn't publish his first book until he was almost 40.
Wow.
Being 36 at the time, that kind of inspired me to put pen to paper, and I wrote Beast and Burden, my first book.
Yeah.
Now, I never really tried writing anything before that. I wasn't what you would call an avid reader. I would read the odd book here and there, but since reading the Jack Reacher books, I became an avid reader. So I'm a complete novice to the full writing thing. But I think the kind of later start has actually benefited me, actually starting writing when I was 36, because you pick up life experiences and stuff like that helps you bring your story and your characters to life.
Yeah, that was something that he kind of started writing kind of later in life as well, which, I mean obviously Lee Child is such a massive author. He's released so many books now, and so that's kind of mad to kind of think that you don't need to necessarily start kind of early to get a successful career in the writing world. So that's fantastic to find out.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that your wife kind of helped feed this newfound kind of love of Lee Child that you developed by going on a bit of a charity shop hunt? Is that right?
Absolutely. My wife is a charity shop fiend. She can't walk past one. And we were sitting watching that show together, and I just happened to mention that I might want to read one of these books at some point. Now, it was one of these kind of things I said in passing. I probably had no real intent to go out and actually find a Jack Reacher book. But the next day, she came home with a pile of them, and she just kept adding to it every day. Every day she came home, I found another one. So eventually I had a pile of 12 or 16. Start, going through these books, and she's just been wonderful. And without her doing that and bringing me these books, I wouldn't have started this. She's been wonderful, and I honestly can't thank her enough for bringing the books home. She's been my biggest fan and supporter through this whole journey. She's been brilliant.
It's great that she's had that kind of inspiration for you to kind of put and kind of spark that really inside you, which is fantastic. And I think sometimes I do think sometimes that people kind of need that kind of like outside influence to kind of get them started and get going a little bit. So now you're taking inspiration from Lee Child, you set out to write a book, and as you mentioned earlier, the results of that is your debut book, which is Beast and Burden. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that story and about the book a little bit?
See, this is the part I always find difficult, is because you spend so long writing this big long book, and then somebody wants you to sum in 3 or 4 sentences. It's quite difficult. But so basically, my story, Beast and Burden, it centres around Amos Fisher. He's a widower and an ex-Royal Marine. And on the same day that his wife passes away from cancer, armed thugs break into his house, kill his dog, and kidnap his daughter. The kidnappers, however, they leave behind his daughter's phone, which their boss, the mysterious Mr. B, desperately needs. So Amos is then forced to use his skills and experiences and use the phone as leverage in a race against time to try and save his daughter from the most dangerous gangster in Glasgow.
Yeah, and
It's the best I can sum it up, really.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. I think it's definitely going to be something that grabs people. One of the things that I think will help grab people, one of the things that I found a bit interesting myself, was the fact that it is set in Glasgow, and obviously you're a Scottish writer, so it's maybe not too surprising that you set it in Glasgow, but I thought with the kind of Lee Child influence, that I was thinking that you might end up kind of, and having kind of read a little bit of the blurb before discovering it was set in Glasgow, I thought you kind of might have a bit of a Mason Cross style approach to Scottish crime writing and have it set in the States rather than kind of in sort of Glasgow or somewhere else in Scotland. Was there something that kind of made you kind of pick that as a location rather than kind of setting it in the States?
Well, I chose Glasgow because this is where I'm from. I'm born in Motherwell. I know the area, and I felt that because this is my first kind of foray into the world of literature, I thought I'd try and stick to where I know. I know the places I write about in the book, and I know the pace and the rhythm, the dialogue of the characters, which is important, I think.
Yeah.
I think that having a familiarity with that sort of stuff allows to life a bit better. Because if you know the dialogue, the pace, and how people speak and stuff like that, it just makes them more real. And also, there are points in the book where I tried to kind of make the locations like another character in the scene, and you can only really do that if you know these places well, I think.
Yeah, and I think sometimes whenever, obviously, in particular, any readers that read the book for viewers in Scotland, it helps them a little bit whenever they can visualise the places as well, and it kind of helps kind of bring the story a bit more alive to them as well as they're reading it as well, which is, I think, is quite an important thing.
A few people had mentioned it when they read it. They said they really enjoyed being taken round these places because they know these places and it was fun for them. They enjoyed that trip round the city.
Yeah. I think it definitely does add something if you know the place really well of the book that's reading, and I think that's probably why in Scotland so many of the Scottish crime writers reading, and I think that's probably why in Scotland so many of the Scottish crime writers are so successful, because not obviously beyond the fact that they're really great writers, but I think the fact that their books are set in places that people recognise kind of does definitely help kind of create that kind of little bit more interest for people, because we definitely do. I would say as a library service, we definitely do see that Scottish books and ones kind of set in kind of sort of either Lanarkshire or kind of the sort of central area do kind of be just have that kind of pique that interest in people who might have not know much about the writer, but it is something that kind of like they're like, oh, that's set where I know, so we'll kind of have a look at it and we can read something. So yeah, I think it does help a little bit. Now, I'm not sure if I read this, but I think it was possibly in a review of the book. I think that the story has got a little bit of a Taken feel to it, which was a fantastic movie with Liam character in it, was amazing and also completely terrifying and all in one go. Which do you think your main character Amos Fisher can have that kind of same effect on people as they're kind of writing? They kind of love them, but also not want to meet them in a dark alley kind of thing.
I hope so. I mean, that's definitely what I was aiming for with Amos. It's actually why I made him a Royal Engineer, because I don't think people realise just how well trained Royal Engineers actually are. I mean, the heroes in these types of stories always seem to can be some special forces, a kind of SAS type guys, but Royal Engineers, because they what to do, because they build bridges and they build infrastructures for the soldiers coming in, they're the first ones into any conflict and the last ones out. And because of that, they have to be some of the fittest, smartest, and most well-trained soldiers in the army. And they're a law unto themselves, really. They're kind of a special kind of breed. And also kind of the main driving force behind Amos as well is that he has a father. He's trying to save his daughter, and
Yeah.
what father wouldn't tear a city apart trying to save his children? So he's got that kind of edge, you know. He's got the training and he's got the motivation to be a beast, to be an animal, and rip the city apart to save his daughter. That's pretty much what he's trying to do.
One thing, just do you have any kind of background in that sort of thing, like the sort of Royal Engineer thing? Because obviously it's something you've kind of were saying about, the kind of quite a bit passionate bit there about being they're the first ones in and really kind of put everything in place. Do you have any kind of background with kind of that yourself?
No. I knew, I have a couple of friends. I knew a few people who are Royal Engineers, and they spoke passionately about it, and they've told me a lot about it. One guy I spoke to, in fact, he helped me with a few details in the book. His name was Jerry. I actually named a character after him in the book, but he was very helpful. But it's just speaking to these guys and hearing their stories and stuff like that. You kind of realise that it's something you don't realise, that engineers, these bridges have to be built.
Yeah.
Soldiers have to get to the fighting, and sometimes they can't get there. So engineers have to get and build bridges, and to do that, they have to do it under fire, under like stressful conditions. They have to be fit and scary guys. They have to be scary guys to go in and do this with no protection, pretty much.
Yeah. That's what I guess it's probably part of the thing that you don't really kind of think about when it comes to kind of conflicts and stuff like that. There maybe is these people who aren't quite the sort of front line, who actually are the front line, if you know what I mean. They're not the ones you traditionally think about it. But back to the book though. I was wondering about what your experience was in terms of getting the book published, because that's something that whenever I speak to authors, they all kind of tend to have a bit of a different experience in terms of it. Some manage to get it published without any problems whatsoever. It's kind of like they send it off, it's just polished and off they go. And then there's other people who send it off to about 1 million publishers and they get told no for about 10 years and then eventually gets published and becomes a bestseller. So there's no kind of rhyme or reason as to it. But I always find it a little bit interesting to kind of find out about what is the person I'm talking to's experience of getting published. So what happened with your book in terms after you got it finished?
Yeah, it was definitely a roller coaster. I mean, I sent it to lots of different agents and publishers and stuff, and I've got a lot of rejection letters, and I've kept them all in a folder. So I've got them there. But it was fun. I mean, this being my first time ever trying a book, I had zero experience or knowledge of what to do or how to go about it properly. I definitely made some mistakes, and it's been a huge learning curve. But the thing is, I know where I went wrong, I know where I went right. I tried to do as much research as possible, but there's just so much out there, and sometimes you just have to make mistakes and learn from experiences. I did try and shy away from the kind of self-publishing thing. I wanted to be traditionally published, because I'd read a lot that it's harder to go into the traditional publishing once you've been self-published. But since doing that, I've spoke to other authors. I went to bloody Scotland earlier this year and spoke to a good few authors there, and that kind of stigma of self-publishing, it's not really there much these days. I mean, it's really quite easy. If the work is good enough, then somebody at some point will notice it and they will sign you up or whatever. So my goal now is just to make some really good writing, sign you up or whatever. So my goal now is just to make some really good writing and just put it out there any way I can, whether it's traditional, whether it's self-publishing. I won't be scared to do it next time. But it's been difficult but fun.
Yeah. I do always think it's quite an interesting thing because I mean, you do kind of hear stories of people like I've had authors saying to me like they've received replies back from publishers saying, yeah, we really love the book, but we've already got our 2 Scottish authors on our books already, so we don't want a third. And you just think that's such a crazy way of thinking, because you think that it should go down to the quality of the book rather than the fact that you've already got 2 Scottish authors on your books already. You know, it's mad. But I guess it's just obviously publishers must have their business models about how they kind of want to run their businesses and stuff, and they have to kind of do what they feel right for themselves. But it's an interesting thing, and I think the self-publishing thing also has kind of opened the doors for a lot of people who have rejection pile all the time, sort of thing, and they just I want to kind of eventually get it out. I was actually the last author I was talking to, Mike Kiernan, has self-published,
Oh, I
and
know,
and,
mate.
he,
Yep.
and he's had quite a lot of success from that. So, so it's interesting that you kind of how people kind of go about it and kind of find different routes into getting the book out there and into the hands of the readers, which I guess is what it's all about. So it's
The
fantastic.
most important thing, yeah.
Yeah. And talking about that, what's your future plans for the writing world? Would you like to have an Amos Fisher book too, or do you think you'll go down something a bit different and do kind of standalones? Is there kind of any kind of plan in your head as to what's happening there?
Well, the Amos Fisher was only ever meant to be a standalone book. I have no plans to do a follow-up just yet, but it was. I keep getting requests for a sequel because people's book seems to be a fan favourite and they want more of Jerry. So I never say never. I'm currently working on a kind of psychological thriller with a different
Okay.
character, and that's going to be set in 1984 London, where a serial killer's hunting down gay men. So that's what I'm currently working on. But
Wow.
as far as Amos goes, it's meant to be a standalone, but I might come back to it at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, you might be convinced by the fans to come back and write another one. Fantastic. Now that sounds great. And so the book you're kind of so you are working on a book just now as well. So how
Yep.
far along are you with that? Is it kind of still kind of early stages or?
I'm about a quarter way through it, but it's very slow. My first book with Beast and Burden, I managed to get through it in about just under a year because I would write it when I was putting my daughter to bed. So while I was sitting in the room and she was sleeping, I would spend an hour or two sitting writing out. But as she's getting a little bit older, her bedtime is kind of migrated to a little bit later.
Yeah.
So and not getting that same time. So it's trying to now find and squeeze time in to get this next book writing. So it's coming along slower than my first book, but I'll get there eventually.
Well, you'll get there. That's fantastic. That's good. And if any of our listeners would like to kind of connect with you online, anyway, where's the best places to try and find you on there?
The best place I would say is probably my website, leeadamauthor.co.uk, but I'm also active on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So if anybody wants to reach out and just say hello, then feel free.
Fantastic. And do you happen to have on top of your head? Do you remember your handles for these things if anyone's looking for them, or will they just search for Lee Adams? They're all on your website, I think.
Lee Adam Author. Lee Adam Author on Facebook. Yeah. It's Lee Adam Author on Facebook, same as on TikTok, and I think Lee Adam Author, Lee Adam 86, I think it was on Instagram, something like that. But if you search Lee Adam Author, you'll find them all. Or again, go to my website, they're all like there.
Fantastic. And do you have any kind of events planned that listeners might be able to tag along to if they're kind of interested in the book to find out a wee bit more about it and things like that? Have you got any kind of author type events planned to go to?
Yeah, I have. Well, an online event coming up during Book Week with yourself, Chris. I can't wait for that. I'm looking forward to that. The details for that will be posted on my website as soon as we get dates and that confirmed. But as far as that's all I've got planned just now.
Fantastic. And yeah, as you say, we are planning on doing a Book Week Scotland event online, which we will kind of reveal kind of closer, maybe a little bit. Well, in fact, actually, we may actually have the details out actually by the time this podcast goes out. If we kind of get it all sorted,
Right.
we're kind of hoping to get our kind of our Book Week Scotland Book Week Scotland plans sorted fairly soon. So kind of maybe either out or very, very soon coming out, which is very exciting. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to kind of ask you guys about was I always like to try and find out from my guests what's kind of they have been kind of reading recently, or have they got any book recommendations or that kind of stuff. So is there anything that you've been reading recently that's really kind of caught your eye and that you would kind of really kind of put out to our listeners as a must read?
I've been reading loads, absolutely loads, but there have been two standout books for me this year. The first one was A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. Such a beautifully written book. It's got everything. It's got tragedy. It's joyful. It's emotional. But it's not what I would usually read. I usually read the kind of Jack Reacher thrillers, David Baldacci, stuff like that. And it was fantastic. A total 6-star read. Absolutely fantastic book.
Fantastic.
Another one was Last Devil to Die, which is the fourth in the Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club.
Yeah.
And that is the first book to ever bring a tear to my eye. It was so emotional and touching, yet light-hearted and funny. I love the whole series, and it's an absolute must-read for anybody. But there's loads. There's so many great authors out there, and I've been reading a lot of Alex Kane recently. She does some novels with Janie, a character Janie Callahan.
Okay.
Brilliant, wonderful gangster gangland thriller. Is brilliant. And I've also been reading Angela Nurse's Rowan McFarlane series. Such strong female characters, and the storytelling is absolutely brilliant. So I'd recommend those two writers as well.
There you go. So there's some fantastic writers to kind of check out and have a look at. I haven't read it myself, but I have heard a lot of good things about that as well. So I think that probably is one to kind of check out. And I think everybody knows about Richard Osman, and if you haven't heard about the Thursday Murder Club, I think at this point, then I think you've been living under a rock for the last few years, I think.
Again, it's cosy crime, which is not something I'd usually read, but I took a chance and I absolutely loved it. It's just wonderful, light-hearted. I couldn't help but smile when I was reading it. It's just such a wonderful series to read.
I think that's one of the great things about books sometimes, is that when they do kind of catch you by surprise a little bit like that, where you kind of set out reading it and you're not really expecting much from it, and then you just fall in love with it a little bit. Like,
absolutely.
It's not a crime book by any means, but one of my favourite books, The Rosie Project, is like that, and it's I sort of started reading that kind of not really thinking that it'd be something that I kind of really loved, but I ended up kind of, like I say, it's probably up there with either my favourite book of all time or thereabouts,
Thereabouts.
And it's a fantastic kind of novel to read, and it's just kind of caught me by surprise because I didn't expect much from it as I kind of started reading it, but then I kind of fell in love with it. So, but
I've not read it, but I'll definitely add it to my list.
Yeah, it's a bit of a kind of romantic comedy, I always say. It's about the main character. It's never really kind of mentioned, but it's about a professor who sets out to find his sort of most kind of perfect partner, and he kind of comes up with a kind of like formulaic way as to kind of how to figure that out, and as what happens with love, it doesn't really kind of work out the way he thinks it will, but in a kind of scientific way, and he falls in love with someone completely, probably the opposite. Maybe you would maybe think of who he thinks he would. But it's a fantastic series of books. It's really good. So thank you very much, Lee, for coming and telling us all about Beast and Burden, which we have. I don't think it's available just yet in our libraries, but we will be putting orders in for it very soon, and it will be available in our libraries to get access to for any of our readers or listeners to kind of get a chance to kind of read it as well. So do watch for that coming onto our shelves very, very soon. But it was great to hear from you, Lee, and all the best with the next book.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me.
So thank you very much, Lee, for joining me and telling us all about Beast and Burden, and I hope that the launch of the book has went really well and that there's lots and lots of people coming out there to read it. And if you haven't done so, watch out for it becoming available in our libraries very, very soon. There has been orders placed for it, and they will be available on our shelves very soon. So do check out that, and watch out as well if you think it's something you want to catch as well for the Book Week Scotland event that we will do a wee bit later in November with Lee as well, and kind of catch up with them a little bit again to see how everything is going at that point. So, and on that note, we do have a whole host of Book Week Scotland events that will be out and about by this point, and so you can catch up with all them on our website. If you go to our online catalogue and search for Book Week Scotland, you will find all the events on there, and you will be able to kind of book places for some of them through that as well. And if we can't book it through there, you should be able to kind of contact the library for the event and book a place on there as well. So do watch out for those events. There are some fantastic ones which you can get along to and enjoy Book Week Scotland with our library service. So do watch out for those and get a booking in early. So that's all for me for now, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Again, thank you for Lee coming along and talking to us about his book. And do watch out for it hitting our shelves very, very soon. Bye for now, guys.